afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our August 2018 North Carolina Governor's Working Group on Veteran Service Members and their families. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I would like to introduce Secretary Larry Hall, the chairman of the working group, and look forward to having his remarks. Thanks, sir.
And we're on. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. I know everybody's in the middle of the summer or trying to close out and get ready for the school year coming up. So the challenge is just beginning for the last quarter of the year. September meeting, we're going to discuss some changes that we want to do, and then conferences and so forth. I think Jeff said so it's still almost January before we're back for anything to do after the September meeting.
Yes, sir. That's correct, sir.
So for planning purposes, kind of know you have the ability to connect with each other on the issue areas you're working on. That's great. You know, we've worked on suicide prevention, homelessness, as well as opioid use, and now all of them coming together in behavioral health issues we're all facing throughout our community. So this ability for us to coordinate our services and have a holistic approach is important no matter what specific topic or presentation we're getting for that particular month. So again, I appreciate you being here. I know it's a challenge to make sure you get the maximum value out of these meetings. We're trying to cater the format so you can in fact do that, and it'll be structured for you to do that and have the maximum ability to service our veterans at the end of the day. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Deputy Secretary Cody Kinsley, my boss.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. So I think the first update that we wanted to just share was that my position recently changed to the Deputy Secretary for Behavioral Health and Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. Actually excited about that for a couple of reasons. From just a broad behavioral health aspect, it really allows us to think more holistically about the continuum of care that we're offering in the community and in our facilities. In the context of me continuing to come to this group, which I intend to remain a member and represent the department and our involvement here, is that I hope that it allows us to bring here some additional resources and thoughtfulness that we span across the department and the work that we do here. So the two things that I wanted to point out were one, we have a lot of facilities across the state. We're serving a lot of people in those facilities, understanding how we work clearly with the VA and their work and things that our individuals that are in our facilities do well, and how we do that well, and bring forth best practices and making sure that veterans are getting top-notch care no matter where they're going throughout the state. And then the second thing is one of the other new programs that I'm responsible for is our senior advisor for ADA, or Transitions to Community Living Settlement, which is a kind of holistic, coordinated effort to really push individuals from institutional care into community care so that they can live. It brings to bear a lot of housing resources as part of that, in concert with their health care. The basic principle being that securing someone in housing is a great way, a great first step to getting someone healthy from both physical and emotional and behavioral well-being. And so I'm hoping that we can be thoughtful about how we're using those resources to the purposes of care, overall veterans' health and well-being really align. So that's big picture. I think we've done a lot of just quick high-level recaps as we're rounding up, looking back on FY18 about some things that we tried to do. Really, I think again from the vision of mental health plans, and now more broadly, high-level recap. It's focusing around our veteran support specialists, broadening capacity in the mental health and behavioral health space.
Thank you very much, sir. And we've got Mr. Jeff Doyle representing the VISN.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Director Seekins wanted to apologize for not being here today. She is in DC for planning meetings this week. So really the update that I have from the VA is just wanting to make sure everybody is aware of the upcoming Military Women's Health Symposium scheduled for September 19th out in Greenville. This is a media event with VA and other community partners. And so if you're in the area or if you wish to make it out there, please the updates from the business.
Sir. Mr. Edmonds, Director Edmonds from Workforce Solutions, sir.
Good afternoon. On behalf of Secretary Copeland, Commerce Secretary, welcome to everybody. As always, it's great to be part of this team. A couple of things that we've got going. The slide, I changed it a little bit from last time, and there's a lot of what we have going continues, and so the highlights are in, or the changes are in blue, or if there's something new, it's in blue on the slide. So with the NC4Me hiring events, the North Carolina for Military Employment hiring events, we're looking at expanding that not only to the rural areas that we talked about last month, but also looking at sector-specific events. And I put some examples up there: public safety, healthcare, some of the trades, etc. Wherever there's a need in North Carolina, identifying those gaps and getting veterans that need employment or want different employment together with those employers. So we're doing the analysis on that right now, and we'll look at rolling something out early next year. I've got a list of the upcoming NC4Me events for the rest of this year. Since the last meeting, we had a very successful event at Fort Bragg. And again, the difference, these events, the job fairs, is we actually do interviews. The employers do interviews. So we help the veterans write resumes. We work on their soft skills, some interview techniques, and then we match them with employers instead of 30-minute interviews. So our metric for success is that either a hiring, which we know is probably rare because it's the first conversation veterans had with the company. If the veteran gets asked back for a second interview, so that's success. And so you can see the numbers there. Out of 133 job seekers, we had about 50% that either got invited back for a second interview, or actually 7 got offered a job on the spot at Fort Bragg. So a very successful event. We're partnering with North Carolina National Guard and NC State for the NC State Veterans Career Expo on the 5th of September. If you're interested in that, I did see some flyers on the table as I walked in, so that promises to be a good one. We're working on the national level with the U.S. Chamber for Hire Our Heroes, and that'll be in Charlotte on September 11th. I talked about the hiring event in Elizabeth City next month. We've actually moved that one to the spring. And then October 19th and 20th is the Welcome Home Hickory, and this is a great model that Hickory actually came up with, and we're looking at it to see if we can replicate it in other places. For the first 50 veterans that register for this event, at no cost to the veteran, it will be provided transportation. They'll be provided hotel accommodations for them and their family. Gas car, local transport, see what's in the area, see the schools, and it's really Hickory's effort to bring veterans into the area. And so that'll be an interesting one to watch to see if that's a viable model to continue doing. In late November in Jacksonville, and then in December we're going to have a hiring event down in the Lumberton Pembroke area. As I talked about last month, we had just put a disabled veterans outreach program specialist at Bebop in the Lumbee tribe down in Pembroke, first one in the nation. That is happening nowhere else, and so it's very much groundbreaking. So we're gonna do a hiring event in December and see what he's been able to do the first few months. And then the last thing I think is a great example of what this forum does and the value this forum brings to veterans, and it's collaboration with Department of Public Instruction, specifically Doug Taggart, who's not here right now, but he's usually sitting out there, and he runs the Troops and Teachers program for public instruction. And this came about, this collaboration came about because he was here and I was here. We had a conversation at the end of one of these meetings on how we could support his efforts to areas that need teachers and by tapping into the high population area of veterans. And so it's just an example of the collaboration that takes place in this room every month. And so I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you very much. That's all I've got.
Thanks, sir. Got Brian Ward for Mark Belos and the VBA side.
Good afternoon. Mark sends his regrets. He was unable to be here today and sent me instead. I have a couple updates I want to provide. I think they're on the slide up here, but I'm also going to provide a little other information as well. We will be participating in an event where we provide assistance to first-time applicants. We're really focused on trying to find veterans who've never filed a claim for benefits, and that's going to take place September 11th in Kernersville at the C-Box. So if you know someone who's never filed a claim for benefits, please encourage them to come by. We will, of course, talk to people who have filed claims for benefits as well. Veterans Experience Action Center. The next one is going to take place in Cary at the Herbert Young Community Center, September 13th through 19th. And that will start at 9 o'clock on the 13th and go to 3 p.m. 8 o'clock on the 14th and 15th. The 14th will stop at 3 and the 15th will stop at 2. And generally, the reason they stop that early is so we can serve every veteran that gets their name on the list to see us. And we usually don't get out of there till quite a bit, several hours after 2 or 3 o'clock. This event is hosted by the Wake County Veterans Office and the American Legion. So we appreciate their assistance in making this happen. And there will be we expect VA hospital members to be there, the Veterans Center, and also state and local veterans organizations. Right now, also on the slide is our website, and I asked them to put that on here because if you ever want to know what's going on, go to this website. It shows everything we have on outreach coming up, and it may direct you to go to another page to see the rest of our events that are coming up, but it's a really great resource to have. We are currently at the regional office starting to work on our FY fiscal year 2019 outreach calendar. And we're really trying to focus on underserved areas. We're actually doing some analysis and looking at comparing different areas as far as the percentage of veterans that are getting service-connected benefits. And we're trying to focus on those areas where that percentage is low. However, if any of you are interested in having a VAC in your area, you just need to let us know. You can contact me. My email address is brian.k.ward@va.gov, or you can call my phone at 336-251-6461. Also, if you hear of a VAC that's going on and you want to participate in it as a vendor, you can contact us as well. I can tell you we just had a very successful Veterans Experience Action Center in Dunn. Can't say enough about the city and the mayor's support in that area. They basically did everything together. They got the space. It was really well organized, supported, and we basically just had to show up with our people and set up. So if any of you are interested in sponsoring an event, those types of items make things a lot easier for us, especially when we're doing things in different parts of the state. A couple other things I wanted to tell you. One was, I'm sure most of you are aware, we're in what's called a national work queue. It's an electronic work environment as far as veterans claims. I'd say probably 70% of the claims, compensation claims we process in North Carolina are North Carolina. they're centralizing what we call the centralized mail hub. It's kind of confusing to a few locations, and we have been named one of those locations. So we will be hiring quite a few additional claims assistants in the near future to staff up. Really good news is our vocational rehabilitation department has been severely understaffed over the past 5 years. When you compare workload to staffing, we were one of the worst staffed uh, programs in the country. Even so, we were one of the best performing in the country, but it was quite difficult to maintain that performance with the staffing. And the good news is that VBA is right sizing staffing in the vocational rehabilitation division, and we are hiring 20 additional vocational rehabilitation counselors for the state of North Carolina. So that to give you an idea of what that means, our staffing ceiling in that division was 52. So we're going up to 70. Huge increase, and we're excited about it. As such, we are looking for space. We want to put those counselors all over the state of North Carolina. We are adding two additional counselors to Charlotte, which we already have two there. We're adding another one to Salisbury. We'll be adding people to Fort Bragg and Camp Lejeune. But we're really interested in trying to find space in the Raleigh, Durham, Cary, Chapel Hill area, this whole metro area. Because right now we only have one person in this area. And if you know of any space, office space, they have to have an office that's available that we wouldn't have to pay a lease on, we'd be very interested in hearing from you. I have already reached out to the state as well as county veteran service organizations, officers, and we may have something come out there. But I thought this would be a good opportunity. If anyone knows of any office space available, please get in touch with me because we'd be very
Thank you very much, sir. And next up, we have Mr. Jim Prosser, Director of Veteran Services for the state of North Carolina. Assistant Secretary Prosser.
Sir, I just have a few quick updates. First on the list is on the bottom of the agenda, it talks about that October meeting on the 25th, and it says that it's closed to the public. However, as the host of that conference, if you guys have folks from your organizations that are out there in that area and don't get to come all the way to Raleigh, that you would like to have them come to the conference, please let me know, and we'll make sure we make arrangements for them. We'll bring in some extra chairs or something. So that will work with you.
Just don't plan on getting a hotel room.
Yeah, we've got the whole hotel booked, so that's why I said if you got somebody in that area that wants to come for the working group, then please let me know that. We'll make sure we get them a seat in there. Second thing is on September 18th, we're going to have an open house at our building downtown Raleigh here, and that information will be on our website. It's our third anniversary of our department, so we'll be having some activities going on that day. Also, speaking of the conference down there, part of that next working group that you would definitely would, if you can attend, if you're not in that area and you want to watch the one in October, Dr. Seekins from Business 6 will be there, and she's going to have all four of the new VAMC directors with her on a panel, and we've given them about 2 hours, so we'll be able to have some discussion with them at that as well. So looking forward to that. And I also wanted to let you know that I got a chance to talk to our new VA Secretary, Robert Wilkie, when we were at the conference last week, and I'm excited about what I see for the future here in North Carolina. He is from North Carolina, Fayetteville, and he has worked with Senator Tillis for Military and Veteran Affairs, and I worked with him when I was the county service officer. So he kind of understands how the VA system works, and he's been in government for a number of years in a lot of different positions. And I'm just really excited. I think he's going to be a great secretary for us, and we're going to see some real changes there. And the last thing, I just wanted to give you a quick example. Those of you that know me know that I am one of the biggest cheerleaders you will ever find for NC Serve. I absolutely think that that's the way to go, and I'd love to see that spread out across the United States. Sometimes we don't see the forest for the tree right in front of us. And I just wanted to share a little experience I had this week. We've been having a lot of problems getting applications for a position up in Black Mountain at our cemetery. And all of a sudden it hit me. I called Brandon Wilson up there from NC Serves Western, and I said, Brandon, I know you've got a network of employers that you work with and people that help find jobs like NC Works and all the different groups and ABCCM. And I can't get applications. Why can't you help me with that? And he's like, you gotta be kidding me. He says, why didn't I think of that? He said, we don't put the state postings on our radar. And it's just like we've been working this for years together, and we never thought about using each other. So please, not only as you're looking out around all the other organizations, look within yourselves and see if there's some way that we can work. So I think that's going to help us, and it will help the folks up there at NC Serves Western to get more jobs. So we're working on that. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, and next up, I'm just going to have a few updates for Governor's Working Group business. First slide here I wanted to share with you is we had a little slump in viewership and participation 2 months ago because of Facebook's political speech rules, but last month we came back strong. Over 6,000 people clicked on the Governor's Working Group on Facebook to see what we were up to, in addition to the 100 to 120 people in the room. So we are succeeding in getting the word out and sharing the information that we have with people outside of not only this room, but the rest of North Carolina and parts further afield. And nice shot there of our folks, 6,001, and that is the printout from Facebook, so you can see we weren't really making that number up. This is my job. This is the most important work I do. We are following up on North Carolina Practice Improvement Collaborative from November 7th, 2017, reducing veteran suicide. And I just wanted to talk about a little what the things we've been doing in the last year to affect that goal. We had a Practice Improvement Collaborative with almost 200 people in all walks of life working with us there. 3 of the first 4 working groups this year were focused on reducing veteran suicide, including hosting the National VA Suicide Prevention Director, Dr. Franklin, in April. Our partnership with NCTV continues to grow. Participation in the Governor's Working Group, as you've just seen, has expanded considerably. Our department has increased state funding to support students in crisis and students' mental health in the public instruction system, which helps veterans' children. We're looking at resilience, access to lethal means, mental health first aid, and basically just having a much better system of trauma-informed care out there. Over the course of the last 2 months, the folks in Charlotte, many of former co-workers of ours, have been engaged with SAMHSA's Soldiers and Military Veterans Family Technical Assistance Center in doing a crisis intercept mapping initiative and a community challenge to reduce suicide. And the folks down there have combined the two into one effort because it's all the same people. And they're really doing wonderful work. Here's a good shot of them from yesterday. They concluded a 2-day session with folks from upstate New York on technical assistance. And they are doing a wonderful job of going through their community and finding out what happens when you pick up the phone to call for a loved one or yourself and where those hiccups and roadblocks are. So we will have a report out from them in the month of October at the October Working Group on their progress, because their progress in Charlotte also is informing the rest of the nation. And then last but not least, also concurrently in Carteret County right now, folks from Visit 19's Myrick are out there conducting their Rural Veterans Suicide Reduction Initiative. And Crystal Anderson, who was out there yesterday, called to give me a good report on it, and we're going to see good things out of them as well. So we'll hear more about that. But the point that I'm making is that we continue to battle veteran suicide every single day, because every week we still lose 5 in North Carolina. And here we go, here's a little bit about that. sometimes technology is a challenge. What y'all are seeing is actually a former Marine. His name is Kevin Rumley. He runs the Veterans Treatment Court in Asheville. And this is a little bit of the work we've been doing with campsite strategies to for our public information campaign. As you all know or may not know, Suicide Prevention Week is September 9th through the 15th. So we will be blanketing the airwaves and the interwebs with this, except with sound. Well, we had sound. We'll find it. So all of these will be posted, and for the month of September, we will also be sending links to everyone on our email list so that you can download these and share these. They'll be shareable through Facebook and our YouTube page as well. This is a former coworker of mine and one of our panel guests, Kyle Snyder. Fortunately, it does have a little bit of closed captioning. I think y'all get the gist of this. These will be running on UNC TV and other television networks as PSAs, kind of infomercials, in addition to multimedia access points. All right. Here also are some words to live by. These are some other things that came out of our video project with Campsite and the Mental Health Minute projects. Just so we're going to jump to past. There we go. Dr. Fang sends her hellos from Monument Valley, Utah. She is on vacation. All right, and now we are going to jump in with our panel as Secretary Cody Kinsley directed. We've got Martin Woodard, one of my coworkers and a mentor for many years, who has tried his best to shape me. If my panel guests wouldn't mind coming up here and grabbing a seat. Martin currently is closing out the Access to Recovery grant for DHHS, but he's got 30 years in the field. He has run clinics and programs for the United States Air Force and Wake County. In addition to this being his life's work, we've got Allison Drain. Allison, if you could wave to the folks. Allison is our problem gambling program manager that works for us as a contractor. She's manages 50 high school and middle school grants and 19 university and college grants, and trains educators on the stack deck evidence-based problem gambling prevention curriculum. Brenda Montforti is our NC National Guard SASE coordinator, so she works with us to support the North Carolina National Guard. Kyle Snyder, as you saw up on the big screen, is a former coworker. He's a North Carolina National Guardsman, combat injured in Afghanistan. He is also an accredited veteran service officer. He knows the network inside and out. We've got a good friend, Dr. Bruce Capehart from the Durham VA Medical Center. I'm sure many of you know him. Additionally, Joe Hazel. Joe, if you could wave for us. Mr. Joe Hazel used to provide clinical supervision at the R.J. Blackley Alcohol and Drug Addiction Treatment Center, and for a period of about 5 years worked with us for program development for the Veterans Life Center that's opening in July in Butner. And so we'll just go through a couple of slides real quick here. There's Allison, if you would like to do a little introduction about your work here.
Is going to talk about the issue of gambling, which those of us who have put a uniform on or not understand the reality that gambling was and still is an issue in the military. But when it comes to having a conversation about it, it's crickets. So it's important to talk about that as well as other things because of the fact of I look around the room and there's a lot of power brokers in this room and there's the potential for doing something about it. So as the individuals are talking, what I encourage you to do is to ask questions. And once again, once the reason is because of the fact the goal is we're looking for solutions. We're looking to move the conversation forward beyond these rooms here. We're looking to move to solutions. So once again, as individuals are talking, we encourage you to raise your hand to ask questions because the fact the goal is we're looking for solutions, not just to get together and have a nice conversation. So please keep that in mind as the panel members talk. Thank you.
Allison?
Is this on? It's on. Okay. Hi, my name's Allison Drain. Something you should know about me is I love to be the underdog, and fits well with working with the North Carolina Problem Gambling Program because it's very much a hidden addiction. It's something that you don't see necessarily or smell on someone or even know, and many times spouses have no clue until there's complete financial devastation. So to introduce you to the Problem Gambling Program of North Carolina, it started out with just as a helpline and a website, which went on to online chatting options, texting, and motivational text messaging, then to 80 plus trained providers throughout the state that provide no cost treatment to problem gamblers and loved ones, which includes ongoing training for our providers, but also training for clinicians that want to learn more about problem gambling, which then went on to prevention, which is grants to middle schools, high schools, colleges, and universities. So why is problem gambling a threat for the military? As you can see here on the slide provided, the risk factors for those with a gambling addiction are all factors known to be more likely of those among the military. And the highest prevalence rates are actually between the ages of 18 and 24 years old, which is why we also focus our prevention efforts in middle school, high school, and colleges. So also the availability of gambling, the generation that's up and coming is the first generation that has it most available to them, but not just civilians. It's also active duty military folk overseas, gambling on bases, which provides money for military welfare and recreation programs, but also bingo, which is also a formal activity which provides funds. And then, of course, informal gambling in the barracks. This could be card games, casinos near the facility, and bingo, which also co-occurs with a lot of substance misuse. So in talking about research, I looked to the National Council on Problem Gambling to really highlight, and they've really been focusing on this with Capitol Hill the last several years, but really to highlight some research that's very important. And if you look at Veterans Affairs treatment facilities both inpatient and outpatient, as you can see that there's significantly high prevalence rates for problem gambling in the military, which goes back to the risk factors as well as the availability of gambling. But also, I want you to make note of also the comorbidity of PTSD and trauma. And the last sentence on the following slide back, you see that most trauma occurred during childhood. And then, of course, our active duty military also have problem gambling. And then a study was done with pathological gamblers and comorbidity. And as you can see, pathological gamblers are also involved in a lot of other activities: alcohol use disorder, drug use disorder, anxiety disorder, and so on. So when we're talking about problem gambling, we're talking about people that have also been in a treatment for substance misuse, or maybe someone that has had substance misuse and then they're moving on to problem gambling as their next addiction of choice. And I want to really point out that on the first slide is that the DSM-5 is now classifying problem gambling as an addiction, similar to substance misuse. And I wanted to share with you some things that are going on that I think that are very important to know on the national level. The President signed into law the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2019, including a provision that includes screening for gambling addiction, which was taken out of their surveys in 2009. So there is hope. And the national organization is actually questioning as to whether or not they should sponsor a bill requiring VAMCs to have a staffer that is certified in gambling addiction. And I wanted to leave you with a story when we're talking about suicide rates as a focus. There was a decorated Army Apache pilot by the name of Aaron Walsh. He developed a gambling addiction while stationed overseas and spent $20,000 in 1 year. He had unsuccessful treatment attempts. He went AWOL in 2005 before he could be court-martialed. And he ended up homeless in Las Vegas, of all places. And he committed suicide in 2006, leaving behind his ex-wife, Carrie, and their 2 children. And research has shown that problem gamblers have a higher suicide rate than any other addiction because of the financial devastation. So I'm realizing that I'm driving home some points here and some heavy points, but I think it's time that the hidden addiction comes out from behind the bushes and that we start looking this in the face and talking about ways that we can collaborate and integrate. Thank you.
Dr. Bruce Capehart, sir.
It's always a troubling day when the Army guy needs help from the Marine to work in technology. Anyway, welcome everyone. It's good to be here. I'd like to thank Jeff Smith and Dr. Fang for the invitation. This is a good opportunity to come over and talk about substance use and some co-occurring conditions. And Jeff gave me a challenge and said, can you do this in 2 slides? And I said, affirmative, I can. So this is 2 slides long. The bulk of which should be on the slide, which should be over my shoulder, but I'm not going to look on my phone. So I'm just going to trust the slide is up there. It says substance use risk in military service. So for those of y'all who have been in the military, this slide should be more or less self-evident. For those who haven't, we'll go through and touch on a few of the factors here. And let's start with the upper right-hand corner, where it talks about pre-military risk factors. This could be family history. This could be genetic history, things you're exposed to as a child, pre-morbid conditions, high school before they ever join the military, conditions like ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, well-known predisposing factors for substance use. Those factors can all play in before anybody joins the military. And if we look at during military service, let's now move to the lower right-hand corner. Injuries and trauma. In some ways, the military is a rather unsafe workforce. That's because everything in the military is built around accomplishing the mission, not optimizing safety. This is not American Airlines, it's the Air Force. There's a huge difference between those two things. This is all before we ever talk about going to war, which is arguably the world's most unsafe work environment for an occupational health hazard. This leads to physical injuries. It also leads to overuse injuries, for example, lower extremity injuries among soldiers. And of course, something that I spend most of my disorder from exposure to hazard components. On the lower left-hand side of the slide, we see some of the socialization that occurs in the military. You already heard a very good discussion about problem gambling in the military, and everything you heard about problem gambling in the military, you could take all of those exact same sentences and you could cross out gambling and replace it with smoking, dipping tobacco, chewing tobacco, and drinking alcohol. And it's the exact same story. So there's a lot of socialization for doing those habits that begins in the military and unfortunately continues afterwards. There is also one of the great resilience in the military: learn to be tough, drive on, suck it up, drink water, take Motrin, keep going. That's great when you're accomplishing the mission. It's less great when you're out and you're a veteran and you've got other responsibilities. It's hard to unlearn that habit and learn how to raise your hand, come in, and seek help. And then finally, where I spend a lot of my time working professionally, substance use comes in as a self-medication for major depression, panic attacks, post-traumatic stress disorder, and to a lesser extent, traumatic brain injury, and also schizophrenia. If you want to look at the people who have the hardest time, without a doubt, quitting smoking, schizophrenia or post-traumatic stress disorder. It is really hard for that cohort to quit smoking. Quitting smoking in general is hard enough. It's very difficult with those two conditions. So alcohol use disorder is very common, probably the most common problem we see for veterans with anxiety disorders, such as panic disorder, and also with PTSD for self-medication. So on the next slide, potential solutions for veterans in substance use disorder. The first consideration is think about what are the individual's risk factors for substance use disorder, and also their military service. Understanding those risk factors can help with the next decision, which is what's the right place for that person to get care. There are a lot of excellent resources for substance use treatment in this state. VA is only one of them. Now, we are happy to see anybody who comes through our front door, even if it's just straightforward, uncomplicated tobacco use disorder or alcohol use disorder. The place where I think VA care really stands out from most everyone else in the state is when you have a veteran who has a substance use disorder combined with something like have a good understanding of how those disorders interact, and we do have some specialized treatment programs for them. So in that setting, VA care is often the best first-line option. Also, whenever any of these assessments occur, always think about the risk factor for suicide, alcohol, as well as benzodiazepine abuse, removes inhibitions, makes them more likely to try things that are impulsive, including suicide. Keep in mind 911, local emergency room, or the VA's National Finally, alternative therapies can help if you're looking at someone who might have, say, an opiate use disorder that developed in the setting of chronic pain. There are other interventions that can help manage chronic pain. We don't try to cure chronic pain. We try to manage the pain, get it down to a level that the individual can deal with on their day-to-day life, and alternative therapies can help with that pain and reducing, if not eliminating, the opiate use level.
Thank you very much, sir. Seated next to Dr. Capehart is Mr. Donald Thomas, who works with Brenda Monforti to manage the North Carolina National Guard Substance Abuse Program. And so Brenda and Donald, got a few slides here about Brenda's program.
Turn green, that's Air Force for you right away. So I've had the opportunity to manage this particular small program in North Carolina, but it has, fortunately, with the support of the Department of Health and Human Services, and as Mr. Kinsley mentioned, that they've increased the funding by 50% this year, because our particular population really does focus on the the SBIRCH, the screening, brief interventions, and referral to treatment across North Carolina. We're having really good conversations with our National Guard soldiers who may come to us through positive screening. They can come to us through commander referrals, whether it be an alcohol-related incident or a concern at a unit level. And currently now we're able to take them as self-referrals too. So we're not waiting for the issue to be found through a legal avenue. We're out there. We're now accessible to family as well when they have concerns to really call us. And so we can partner with the Alcohol and Drug Council of North Carolina is where this program is housed. And we use their database to make these referrals with agencies like yours. So if you're unfamiliar with ADCNC at this moment, I know Daryl's in the room, back in the corner, and he would be happy to take your contact information too to make sure that you get included in the database so you can help not just the soldiers and service members across North Carolina, but their families as well. So I'll let Donald talk.
Again, I'm Donald Thomas, and I'm the Alcohol Drug Control Officer for North Carolina National Guard. Brenda invited me to this panel because I'm basically the boots on the ground for North Carolina National Guard Substance Abuse Program. Historically, in some historical data, in 2011, North Carolina National Guard was number 4 out of all 54 states and territories as it relates to illicit positives, only surpassed by California, Texas, and Illinois. So now moving forward to 2018, North Carolina has made significant strides in its illicit positive rate and its self-referral. For 2018, this is the lowest amount of referrals that we've had for substance use since being on the project. I consider this to one, what we're doing as it relates to prevention and prevention education. My office has been tasked to provide prevention education to all soldiers within the North Carolina National Guard. And that's providing them with education on substance misuse, also what available resources are out there, and also connecting them to resources. Secondly, I want to contribute our illicit positive rates going down also to the unit and unit leadership itself, and also educating the soldiers, providing the resources for the soldiers, and also having the soldiers to be held accountable for their actions as it relates to substance misuse. So a lot of positive things are going on within the North Carolina National Guard as it relates to substance use. A lot of this could not have been accomplished without the help of Alcohol Drug Council of North Carolina, without the help of the Department of Health and Human Services and the funding that they have helped us in. Finally, I'd like to kind of acknowledge that and make you aware that North Carolina is the only state out of 54 states and territories where we get support for our soldiers to address their substance misuse issues by a single state authority. So again, I'd like to thank the Department of Health and Human Services for their financial resources and support, and also make all of you aware that we're unique in North Carolina, that we are doing something to help retain our soldiers, which not only helps the soldier itself, but also helps our because if they don't remain within the organization, at least they'll go out a better person. Um, Unfortunately, for the National Guard, the National Guard illicit positive rate is higher than active army. That's just a fact. Because of a whole lot of circumstances. Um, Secondly, North Carolina illicit positive rates going down is contributed to, we have a strong prevention education component. And I would say that ours are a whole lot stronger than a whole lot of other states in that regard. Our North Carolina leadership here at the Guard uh, bought into the need for prevention education and has made it mandatory with issuing upwards and other type of directives that allow and mandate units to do the education. Then finally, our drug testing coordinators are making a strong positive step to abide by regulations as it relates to it. So we're doing everything on the guard side to abide by and follow regulations. And I can contribute that to a whole lot of the reasons why our numbers are low. And I'm not going to say that other states aren't following it, but I know that we are.
North Carolina was part of a pilot program for this on a national level, and was it five?
Initially, it was 4 states that started the pilot program. Then 12 other states joined on, and now we're the only state that is still doing it. And we're the state where we're seeing the numbers go down.
Uniqueness of this program, and I know the bottom sentence up on that particular slide up there talks about the tool that we use is the ASIMV, and it really is about having a holistic conversation with soldiers that are coming into the program, maybe because they had an illicit positive or they self-refer. But we do talk about the different 7 life domains, and I know I mentioned that earlier, so I just wanted to point out that we talk about employment, we talk about alcohol use, which is a big military cultural concept that we don't have a lot of conversations around, but it's something that we need to start having more conversations around. In addition to the illicit use and or the prescribed use and continued use after that, but the legal side and the family side and the social side and then the psychological side. So it really is kind of finding which door is someone willing to walk into and then unfolding the rest of the story so we can find resources to provide as the story continues. And that's what the brief intervention piece is, and that's why I think this is critical, is because we really are not closing any in North Carolina. We're having true conversations here that somehow we figured out how to maintain and grow. So we appreciate that.
And also from a holistic side, and going back to North Carolina leadership, North Carolina Soldier Support Service, again, is unique in its own. If soldiers have issues with family problems, Soldier Support Services has family programs and family counseling. If the North Carolina National Guard soldiers have an employment or educational issue, Soldier Support Services has a educational and employment component within Soldier Support Services. So part of the process is if soldiers are having problems outside of substance abuse, there are other resources within this organization that can help address that on the individual level for the soldier and also on the unit level. So again, we're unique because we have a lot of support, a lot of services for the soldiers, and all of that contributes to the positive outcomes that we're having right now.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you very much, sir. Kyle, Mr. Kyle Snyder, as I mentioned earlier, former coworker, North Carolina National Guardman, injured in Afghanistan, and also now works up at Wake Tech helping student veterans. So Kyle, if you'd chat with us for a few moments about your story.
Jeff said I was a North Carolina National Guardsman injured in coast Afghanistan in a suicide bombing in 2012. I spent a year at Walter Reed, and I know we've heard about substance abuse and gambling and addictions, but I was addicted to oxycodone. And the reason I was addicted to oxycodone is because it was easy for me to get. Spent about a year up there. Uh, I had slow release. I had anything I wanted to get my pain to stop. They would pretty much say, every appointment, refill my oxycodone. And I didn't have anybody to tell me that we can help you. They gave it to me one day at the pain clinic, and I pushed it back across the desk, and I said, I'll take ibuprofen. And that's where my journey to the addiction stopped, and felt like I can help other people with what I've done and be able to do it. Um, but find services out there that can help people that are addicted to substance abuse, addicted to painkillers. I can tell you right now, I know a lot of people that are having that issue today that we talk to. And I say we because my wife and I started a nonprofit 4 years ago. In April of this year, we partnered with NC Serves. So you figure, well, this is the 23rd of August, April, we partnered. We've closed 87 referrals. It's just her and I. And it's using resources such as yourselves to get people off the streets, get people jobs, paying bills. Homelessness is a big thing. But I'm going to tell you something that's even bigger. Female homelessness with kids. And you don't really know how big of an issue it is until you get a referral where a female soldier, single soldier, has 2 kids and is getting ready to be evicted. And so that email came in May down in Greenville. And when we went down there, I kid you not, she had a rolling desk chair. That was it. They came and repossessed her furniture, came and repossessed her car. She had no food in the house. She had 2 kids. We furnished her house with donations from the community. We put food in her refrigerator. We put furniture in her house. And I can tell you that there's no bigger satisfaction of a guy who's addicted to oxycodone to walk out of somebody that you have just basically furnished their house. We get referrals for veterans that are just getting out in transition that were never informed of the services that are in the community. That's a problem. Reason I say that is because I'm a veterans education service officer at Wake Tech. I get veterans that come in my office day in and day out. And I'm pretty good at reading somebody when there's an issue. And so if I ask you to close my door, then there's something else that we're going to talk about. And I can tell you that 9 out of 10 times I'm spot on. There's food, no food in the house. There's no money. They didn't know what educational benefits they had. The military said, here's your med board or here's your discharge papers. Thanks for your 4 years or your 5 years. See you later. And that's not the way it should be. So is our problem, is it broken? Yeah. Is it fixable? Sure it is. But one thing that if most of you know that soldiers, airmen, Navy, whatever, are hesitant to ask for help. And that's where support services and resources such as yourself can listen to their stories and help them even more. Because I can tell you right now, there was days that I laid in that bed in 2012 and didn't care if I woke up the next morning. Didn't care. Because I didn't know what was out there for me. But it took a VFW to come to my house at Christmas time and deliver gifts and foods and things. And I thought, you know what? People do care. And so that's what prompted my wife and I to do what we do. And like I said, we're partnered with NC Serves now. And when we jumped on board with them, I'm telling you, the first week it was like 15 referrals. I'm like, okay, what did we do here? But we slowed the pace down. We started working with community partners. She works a full-time job. I work a full-time job. So I'm working with veterans at work. I'm working with veterans when I go home. I'm working with veterans on weekends. I have a Vietnam veteran in Apex, North Carolina right now that we are getting ready to basically redo the inside of this man's home. His wife was killed in July of this year in a car accident. She was a hoarder. He's got some disabilities. He's on a walker, lives by himself. They came in, cleaned the house up, And we got a phone call, we got a referral, and went out there and looked. Um, and I tell you, it's a situation that nobody should live in. So, just asking friends, hey, look, what are you doing on this day? What can you help us out? We've got somebody who wants to buy him a brand new gas oven right now. We're going to go out and redo his floors. We're going to paint his house because we have partnerships out there that will allow us to do that. And I can tell you right now, I always tell a veteran, if you don't advocate for yourself, nobody will. But if you don't speak up, nobody knows. So, um, just a little bit about me. I was, like I said, addicted to oxycodone. I was off of it for a couple of years. Um, I do have lower leg injuries. Um, I've got shrapnel through my body, and I do have pain every single day. But I'd rather live with what I've got right now than to make that, 5 a week decision. And we need to bring that number way down. And so we do talk to soldiers. We get them to resources such as yourselves. So if somebody says that Kyle Snyder sent you or Archangel Alliance sent you, then please take care of them.
Thanks very much, Kyle.
We need more of. I think the thing is we need to get these veterans enrolled in the VA. The misconception of, well, this guy deserves it more than I do is, to me, is bogus. Each and every one of us have served. And, if you've got something that, you were injured in service, or you've got something that the VA can take care of, then we need to get them enrolled in the VA. And I think the lack of how do we go about getting them into the VA is a big problem. Because when they separate, it's a day or 2 days and you're sitting down there and you got toothpick holding your eyes open. We need to push that point across, and we need to be a little bit more forceful of what services are out there. Employment, education, enrolling in the VA, meeting with your local service officer if you've got to. If you don't have a job, make sure you hit your employment counselors. We've got a fantastic employment center sitting right upstairs. I use them probably 5, 6, 7 times a week. I use NC Works. I use our education center. I use the resources that I know, and I can tell you right now, if I don't know of one, I'm going to find you one. I'm going to find you one. But we need to do a better transition job of when they're getting out, or when catching them when they first get out. Less of telling them everything's going to be all right. Because I can tell you right now, I've got veterans, and Dean Terrell can tell you, we've got veterans at Wake Tech that have slept in their cars, that don't have food. But I find that out through somebody else, and that's what I'm trying to pull in. Yeah, I do the educational piece, but I got time for you after work, or I got time for you during lunch. Just come in, sit down, and let's talk life.
Last but not least, Mr. Joe Hazel, longtime friend and mentor. Met Joe when he was running clinical services up at the R.J. Blackey Alcohol and Drug Addiction Treatment Center. I'd like him to share a little bit of some of what he shared with me over the years.
I'm retired Navy, so we don't have this kind of stuff. Actually, R.J. Blackley in Butner was my last full-time job of many that I've served in since my retirement from the Navy. But I learned, I've worked in 3 inpatient facilities across North Carolina and Virginia. But I was the first state hospital that I'd ever worked in. So when I first got there, I saw there were, when a new person comes in, you don't make changes right away, right? But I didn't wait long. The need was there for grief resolution, and the need was there for veterans. they were not being identified as veterans. If they were identified as a veteran, they weren't identified as a combat veteran. Um, and I'm a Vietnam veteran, so I felt pretty much kin to those who were combat veterans. We had guys who were, and women who were honorably discharged, dishonorably discharged, less than honorable discharged, and bad conduct discharged that will come through there. But to me, they still needed the help that the hospital could provide and to identify with them as a veteran. And so I started a program of identifying the veterans that come in, the ones that did have combat duty of any kind, and most of them were homeless when they got there. We would have certain programs, and I developed a program of treatment through the program that they were there was a little bit different than a regular population. So through the years, we probably had not a lot, but at least three at any given time, three veterans of all sorts. Uh, we had uh, we had veterans who were not veterans. We had a schizophrenic who I had a woman working with me, Master Sergeant Nicole Smasham. She was an intern at the time, and she come into my office for supervision, and she said, I need to tell you the story of this guy. He was in Vietnam. He came back from Vietnam addicted to heroin. He came back to the States for a while. Then he went to uh, Russia. His friend was murdered in Russia, and he came back to the United States to make a plan to go back and kill the guy that killed his friend. So I asked Nicole, I said, well, do you believe that? Well, yes, he's very convincing. So I said, well, check his record and see if he was a veteran. He'd never been in the military. So you have to know somebody's going to come in. You see him on the street. You say homeless veteran. I'm homeless. I'm a veteran. Stop and ask somebody. They can't tell you what duty station they had. It doesn't mean I wouldn't give them something, but still, we got people that are imitating veterans. But we had a program that really worked. We had a program that served them for. We had volunteers come in from the VA that helped them to find their DD 214, to help them get in touch with the VA, to help them get what they need. When I first got there, we were in the old building. We moved into the new building with 80 beds, brand new building. Um, when I left, there were 60 beds because of lack of staff. Uh, Today, from what I understand, I believe there's 40 beds out of 80 that's filled right now. And so to get back to where we were with the veterans, we still, even with that short of beds, we need to be identifying veterans, and we need to be working with them to get them where they need to be, to get them to you, to get them to y'all, to get them where they need to be. And right now, I'm not sure what they have since I retired from the state in the whatever year that was, 2016, I think. Um, After I retired, no, I retired in 2012. After I retired, they couldn't replace me, so they asked me to come back. Uh, Contract. So I told them what I wanted, and they gave it to me. So I went back one day, then it was 3 days, then it was 5 days, and finally I just said, "That's it. I can't do this anymore." So I really think that is underutilized. I think it's really a place where anybody can get help, not just veterans, but a program that works, a program that can. A veteran, in my experience there, could not function. If y'all are familiar with seeking safety for PTSD, they could not be in the room with the regular group in there because they would traumatize the group from their experience. So we had to have them separately working with their PTSD. We found that out through trial and error too. So that's been my experience as far as the state hospital goes. Um, and I think a lot of people, even today, may not even know about ADEC. I don't know. Uh, but it's still there. It's still in Butner, right in front of the VLC building is going to be soon. So that's my story.
So, a question regarding veterans and ADHCs or alcohol and drug treatment centers. We know for a fact that behavioral health beds across the state are at a premium, that there's a tendency that they always tend to be filled because the need outstrips the capacity. Do you believe when you were there and from what you've heard that there is enough um, attention, focus being placed on the availability or the treatment being provided and offered to veterans who could benefit from the beds? Because I heard you say that there are 80 beds. However, half of the beds are actually um, yet they're empty.
Waste of money. I think that the when we open with 80 beds, we fill 72 of them almost immediately. Over the years, staff began to leave, and the clinician staff, a lot of people didn't want to drive that far to work, a lot of different reasons. But because of that, then we closed one ward was closed when I left. After I left, they closed another ward. I talked to someone yesterday that said that who's still working there. Out of 40 beds, they have 25 of them filled. So the number of veterans that we have that need help, we have a space, we have resources to benefit a veteran, much less the rest of society.
Do you know if there's any marketing, active marketing that's being done, for example, to the VA, saying, hey, we have open beds available for our veterans across the state?
Not that I'm aware of. That can get tricky too. I used to be able to pick up the phone, talk to RJ Blackley, send my client, and they check in. I can't do that anymore. They have to be admitted from ER or walk in the back door after dark that way. Yes. That is my understanding.
So is there any way that there can be some sort of arrangement made with the VA that perhaps they could provide staff for those veterans that are utilizing, that could potentially utilize those beds?
Oh, I would certainly hope so. Like I was telling Martin, I don't think there's been any outreach from the VA to look at that facility up there.
I have a question. I know the ADACs originally were 100% state supported,
right.
And I think 3 or 4 years ago they became independent. They are now receipt-based only. They do
right.
not get state appropriations.
That's true.
Has there been any change, and you mentioned the term marketing, has there been any change in the way they go about business that now they've got to look for it and figure out? I mean, it's there. So what do we need to solve the problem?
What I have seen is I was told that a person called to be admitted and they said they had to wait 8 weeks. That should never happen because there's not an 8-week waiting list. There's been a lot of miscommunication. There have been staff changes. There have been administration changes. There have been director changes over the last 4 or 5 years. So it hasn't been stable administratively. But from what I understand now, it's getting better. I don't know who's there now and what's getting better, but from what I understand, they're trying to get the administration where it needs to be and then to get the staff where it needs to be. So the staff are actively out recruiting people. Now that it's changing and they see a positive change, they're out recruiting people to help them to bring staff on. The major problem was the healthcare tech. Healthcare tech positions were no benefits, nothing. So they just worked for a low salary. So once they were started to leave, it was very difficult to recruit more. That was another big problem.
I work for Wounded Warrior Project. I'm actually the mental health case manager of North and South Carolina. And the issue that's been addressed here, we have a solution for it for North and South Carolina veterans. We have what's called the Warrior Care Network. We partner with 4 academic medical centers around the nation, UCLA for our TBIs, Boston, Mass, which is PTSD with the substance abuse addition in there. We have Rush in Chicago, which is our MST-focused facility, and we have Emory down in Atlanta. Each one of these facilities can hold, it's a 250-bed facility. It goes on a 2-week rotation. So the only requirements are for warriors, they have to be a member of Wounded Warrior Project, which means anybody who served post 9/11, if they have a physical or mental injury as a result of their service, it costs them absolutely nothing. These are 2-week inpatient that Wounded Warrior Project pays for. We send them there. So if we're looking at something that's for substance abuse, such as alcohol or drug abuse, we have the facilities that are available. We've been working with the VA now for the last 3 years, trying to get more additional veterans out to get them into these programs. But it's there, it's available. I'd be happy to give information to anybody who wants to know more about what that program actually has.
Sure. I think there's a lot of programs around. ADAC is just one small corner in northern North Carolina, which could be utilized more efficiently, and especially for veterans from not just our local area, but across the whole middle part of the state. We have tremendous numbers of homeless veterans in North Carolina, as you know. And so part of this too, now actually, I forgot what year, but we were actually credentialed for mental health. So they couldn't call it Alcohol and Drug Treatment Center specifically anymore, so they changed to R.J. Blackley, because you couldn't identify just as a substance use disorder facility and be certified as mental health. So dual diagnosis is taking place. Co-occurring disorders is taking place, and a lot of veterans need that too. So again, I think it's a very unfortunate way that things have worked out. I have to say that I don't think it was my fault when I got there and all those things started happening, but I met John and Jeff there, and that's when I started looking even more closely at the veteran population there and what was going on. I think that those veterans were referring to other veterans, and that's mainly where the other veterans were coming from, with referrals from mouth to mouth. But I do think it's underutilized, and that's unfortunate. I do think if we could look at utilization for the middle, I did hear they're going to open 20 beds for opiate disorder. I don't know if that's true. That's just what I heard hearsay. But that still leaves 20 more beds that are sitting vacant. And so, you know, if I was younger, I would still be there. But it gets to a point where, not that I'm tired of working with addicts and others, I'm not, but I have a small private practice and I do all I want to do. So, but if I was younger, I would certainly still be there.
Austin now with U.S. Senator Tom Tillis's office. My boss sits on 5 committees. One's Armed Services and one's Veterans Affairs. Be remiss, Betty Jo's here with Senator Burr's office. He's been on Veterans Affairs at one point or another in his career. Explain to me, so you have there's 2 wings of 40 beds each, and one is shuttered at the moment. But 2 of those wings are shuttered, I guess, with 20 beds and 20 beds. Is there a way to somehow look at that and get someone in there, like the VA or someone like that, to look at those different wings? I mean, I'm not speaking out of turn here, but I wonder, I'm sure my office would be supportive, at least exploring ways to get.
I don't believe there would be any resistance to that, in my opinion. I mean, I would support that. I live up there, so I mean, and I know a lot of people who still work there.
How long have they been shuttered? Are they operable again? Are they operable to go back in those wings that have been shuttered?
Oh yeah, they keep them up with the housekeeping. They keep everything.
Brenda?
One of the opportunities that was provided about sitting up here is to kind of kick up some dust around behavioral health concerns that are in the community that we see in our population. And I know 68% of the folks that come through my program are under the age of 30. And one of the things the big discussion we're talking about is bed availability, but a lot of what under age 30 is right in the middle of living life and everything else that comes with that. So they can't detach from all of those responsibilities to go seek help and treatment. And therefore, the investment in the brief intervention side and the screening piece is well paid for in itself, because it allows somebody to stay in the community, continue to meet the responsibilities that they have, get some education under their belt, include their families in the process, and then long-term sustainability piece of that. So that's one of the potential threats that we see under the age of 30. More of, we lack the virtual support, and or there's a fear with providing, you know, mental health and that kind of thing on a virtual platform. So if that's something that we can look into as a community to really like plug in where people are at, living their lives, instead of asking them to leave their responsibilities to go take care of things, and then all the stress just builds from there. So that's, as a panel, I just would be remiss if I wasn't provided this opportunity and didn't bring that up.
Hi. Sorry. In response to that, the questions with the ADAP, I am here. I work for a provider in Eastern North Carolina. We're actually a mental health substance abuse provider. And it's funny to hear all of the questions and the issues that are going on, as we, deal with it every day with average people who are not vets. We also work very closely with our ADATC, and they too, again, not an ADATC, but they too are less in beds. And I think that's sort of a division of mental health question, since they do run those facilities. But on that, I wanted to say, as someone in the community, and we cover the entire eastern part of the state, we have services, we actually serve vets. We have more questions and issues around, and I don't know if this is a platform, around actually getting those services authorized and then paid for. We don't want to give up on seeing vets, but there is a gap in us serving them and then the administrative part of that catching up to it. So keep that in mind. I think there probably are behavioral health providers throughout the state that would be happy to see vets, but I think a lot of them have dropped off because the process has gotten very cumbersome, and getting paid for it has kind of dropped off. So.
Anyone else have any comments or questions or solutions?
Going back to Kyle Snyder, I'm Mike Graham with DAV. We just got back from our national convention out in Reno, Nevada this year. While we were out there, they had set up some NSOs coming in and also some VA reps coming in. Going back to your situation, we had a woman come in. She was homeless, living in a car, 2 children. She didn't even know she was authorized or able to get benefits. They saw her that day. Less than an hour later, she was walking out with a $75,000 check in her hand, with more on the way. So, I'm not pushing DAV, but there's also other organizations out there also. I know Wendy Warrior have claims people. The American Legion. Please, guys, like he was saying, please reach out to the community providers. There's help out there for everybody.
Hello, everybody. My name is Walter Lyles. I work at the federal prison in Butner. As being in the Marines, been in the National Guard, now I'm in the Reserve. I don't get what I want. I got to keep moving on. Listening to Snyder, that kind of hits home. I used to work at the USPFO, and I know Snyder. At the prison, we just had a suicide in February with somebody I was very close to. But we're all here and we're talking about what we can do, pretty much like aftermath, when they get here or whatever. But for anybody who's been deployed recently, and I've been in Afghanistan and Iraq in the past 8 years, I think the problem starts at these demob stations. Because when you come home from a demob station, I don't know how it was for Vietnam and World War II, I can't speak for that. But I do know that the North Carolina National Guard, I do know that the officers, I'm an NCO, so they hound us and they stay on us. And they tell us, if you need help, do this, do that. When I was with the 30th, I got tired of hearing Sergeant Major Swart in my ear, but he stayed in it. I worked with Colonel Jackson. They stayed in it. But when you get to these demob stations, the yellow ribbon people, they take care of us as far as our pay and our this and our that. They do an outstanding job. It's the active duty stations that are giving us our demo briefs. And what they do is, and if anybody's deployed, and if I'm wrong, please stop me. Click, click, click. Don't kill your wife when you get home. Don't beat on her. Click, click, click. Don't drink a whole lot. Don't buy a motorcycle. Sign that piece of paper. Go to your next class. That is your demo brief when you come home from a deployment. Now, I've deployed a total of almost 6 times, counting the Marine Corps and everything. I'm good with it. I understand it. But some of the young kids today don't have the resiliency that a different generation had. You know, the millenniums or whatever, yeah, they're taking over. Some people say that's a good thing, but at the same time, they don't have the resiliency. And it's not always us, the old school guys, that are giving these demo briefs. It's people that are equivalent to their age. They're trying to hurry up. They want to get off work, blah, blah, blah. They think that's funny. It's not funny. Because when you get home, and like I said, we just had a suicide. A Marine, senior drill instructor, black belt. He was on our SORT team, self-defense instructor, 43 years old, 7% body fat. Everybody would go to him for everything. But obviously there was something that we didn't see. So I took it personal. What didn't I see? And then somebody told me, wait a minute, there's 3 words that everybody in the military is taught. Death before dishonor. You're taught to hide whatever and not show anybody. You're taught to keep it from somebody. So he questioned me. He said, and his name is William Curtis Shaw. He said, if Shaw was not the Marine that you think he is, then you would have saw it. But because he was a true Marine, you didn't see it. He's taught not to show it to you. We had an inmate that he talked to about suicide, and the inmate broke down and cried and said, you know something, I didn't realize he knew exactly where I was coming from. So Mr. Smith and other people make the comments of power brokers. The power brokers need to start going to Fort Bliss and Fort Dix and the places that we come home to and make sure that they don't scare a soldier and say, hey, these 345 soldiers are going home, and if you tell me something's wrong with you, you're staying. Just the way you said that makes me think, hell no, I'm going home. We can discuss my problem when I get home. No, your problem is there. You need to explain to him, hey, you're going to stay here for a couple of weeks. Then we'll put you on orders and we'll fly you to Fort Bragg, and you'll be closer to your family. That's not told. We'll let you know now, if you have a problem and something is said, you're not going home with your unit. I'm 21 years old and I've never been away from home. No, I'm going home with my unit. I'm going home with that problem.
You play baseball?
All day, every day.
You hit a grand slam. He's exactly right. We come off these demo stations, first thing everybody's ready to go home. They don't care what's going on inside your head. You say something, you're gonna. I tell you what, right now, you're gonna be held accountable if you go home and say, you know what, I'm having nightmares. Don't you dare say anything. Don't say nothing. And that's happening. That's real life stuff. And yet we've got soldiers that are scared to say something because they want to do 20 in the military. They want to retire, but they've got something going on up here. And I can tell you, I've talked to them. I've lost 2 within the last 6 months. It's real. But to sit up there and have somebody click, 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 and he's exactly right. We need to have ownership of our soldiers 21, 31, 41, or 51 when they come back. We need to have ownership that what they're getting is help. Because I can tell you right now, I lost 3 soldiers. I was laying on top of one of them when she was dead. You think I didn't suffer? But nobody told me until I got to Walter Reed, because I went to Womack. They wrote my medical record on my legs on tape. When I came from Landstuhl, Germany to Fort Bragg, everything about me was written on tape with a Sharpie. You know how many times I had to tell my story? You know how many times my anxiety went through the roof? You know how many times I just didn't want to be there? But we've got to start listening to our soldiers. But at the same time, we've got to get our soldiers to talk. That's a big thing. And I'm gonna soldiers and veterans, but family members. My wife went through it. My kids went through it. The easiest part of me, as I said in that slide, was getting hurt. Because my wife had to quit her job to move with me to Walter Reed because she had to be my 24/7 caretaker. forced 2 high school kids to grow up a lot quicker than they should have. But we have got to remember, it's not just the veteran. That family member is going through it too. So if I get a referral that it's the spouse and her husband's deployed, I am helping her as if she's the veteran, because in my eyes, she is the veteran. Because when we deployed, they deployed. And we've got to remember, listen to what is going on, because you never know what's going through a soldier's head. You never know what kind of day they're having. You ever thought that would have happened to your buddy out of prison? I never thought it would happen to the friends I knew either. So we've got to get them to utilize our resources. Listen to their stories. Don't just, take the first 2 or 3 minutes of the conversation and try to push them out the door, because there's something always much deeper. Get them comfortable and then let them know, hey, I'm going to help you. If I can't help you, I know somebody that will. I've got a book, 2 books now, of business cards and resources that even I use at Wake Tech as an education certifying official. I am there for the veteran from A to Z. And I can tell you, if you got more passion than I got, and some of you in this room know me, challenge me. Because I'm telling you right now, I go to bat every day for a veteran.
I'm a process person, and every person, I'm assuming, doesn't just pick up his duffel bag and walk out the door without somebody saying goodbye to him in some way, shape, or form. So it sounds to me like there's a significant process change that needs to be added to what's done, and that is a mandatory requirement that they enroll in the VA. I mean, they're eligible for it. What's the reason they're not doing it? What's the reason a piece of paper or whatever the process is not given to them, exposed to them when they leave the military?
Is when we've got to have the correct information to give them. But another thing is they feel like a lot of people, correct me if I'm wrong, for those of you who serve, feel like you don't deserve some of the benefits because you're not injured in combat. Are you kidding me? Yes, and I've heard that. Well, I wasn't injured. Well, I can tell you, I received a hero home in 2015. And everyone, correct me if I'm wrong, every one of them before me had a limb missing. And I turned it down the first time because I thought, you know what, there's somebody else out there that could use this. But we have got to get them to that station and say, you know what, enroll in the VA. Find out what educational benefits you can get. Get them to a service officer, because it doesn't have to be physical.
I can tell that the hook is being drawn my way. What I would like to say is the following. One is, I would strongly encourage, first off, I'd like to thank you for your candid conversation today. Second, I would like to say is I would really encourage you to email Jeff to state how and what conversations as we move forward with this conversation as to what you would like to see included in terms of what we work on. Because what I would hate to see is that we had this conversation, which I consider to be very rich and very honest, is that, oh, well, that's done. Let's move on to something else. I think that would be very disrespectful. But what we need from you, once again, so we don't assume what you want and what you need, is to email Jeff to let him know what topics that you would like to see covered and continue to be discussed. Because, once again, I really appreciate the panel. If we could give a round of applause for the panel. And for the audience also, keep clapping because I appreciate your input today. And it's just one of those things where it's the richness, it's the uniqueness that makes all of us come together and make this work. So I thank you. We went over time. I apologize, ma'am. We could not get to you.
We'll have more time for comments and questions in a bit. We've got the NC Serves wrap up for the rest of the state, and then we'll go to introductions and comments. I'd like to thank, again, all of our panelists and especially our moderator, Mr. Martin Woodard. Thank you, everyone, very, very much. I have an awesome team. Brandon Wilson is going to do our NC Serves updates with his NC Serves team. Come on, NC Serves.
Yeah, so I'm going to echo a little bit of what Mr. Snyder was talking about. Family and spouses are a big part of this solution, and that's what one of the values of NC Serves really has. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to give you a glimpse of a one-year report that's coming up. But 9% of what we're seeing in the families that we're supporting are spouses, family members, and caregivers. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to make this very brief. For some reason, ever since I left the department, they put me on last and only give me 5 minutes, and I don't know why that is, Master Sergeant. So with that being said, Kelly's going to talk a little bit about Central. These slides will be made available to you on the internet, but this is Central's little quick report out.
Super quick, I got it from Paul Berry. I'm not Paul Berry, but if you want a good employee, hire a Marine for sure. So for Central, today, actually, we are hitting a monument. We passed 2,000 unique users in the last 2 years, so yay for that. Since our last report out, we added Eastern Carolina University, and we've made some really great headways with the VSOs, the county VSOs, and thank you to Jim Prosser for helping kind of open those doors for us. So just in the last 2 weeks, we've added Johnston County VSO and Forsyth County VSO are now officially part of our Central Carolina network. And we also added the Servant Center, which is the SSVF provider in Greensboro, and the Lee County Outreach Mission. Just a quick update about where we'll be. The 13th through the 15th will be at the stand down. I thought it was a VIAC, but okay, I thought it was a VIAC. We'll be at the VIAC in Cary, and then on September 7th, we'll be at the Robeson County stand down there as well.
Brianna, you're going to talk a little bit about NC Serves Coastal.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brianna Torres. I'm the outreach specialist for NC Serves Coastal. Very briefly on the Coastal Network, housing and shelter has been our top need. That's pretty consistent across seasons since the network has launched on the coast. I did want to draw your attention to the Wilmington Veteran Service Center. They are recently onboarded with us, which is really important because a goal of the network on the coast was to really wrap our care around New Hanover County veterans and military families, and they have been a super user of ours, especially in the month of June. Likewise, our local NAVVETS chapter, they were also really engaged and supportive in connecting those veterans on the coast in the month of June as well.
And Patrick's going to give us a little bit on Metro Atlanta real fast.
Hi, I'm Patrick Hayes. I'm a social worker and community partner coordinator with the Metro Atlanta region. We are currently focusing on the counties that surround Mecklenburg County. We've been working in Mecklenburg County for the last couple of years, hitting it hard, and as we've added all the other counties, we're reaching out there. We've successfully onboarded both the Union County and Catawba County VSOs recently. In addition to that, we've been coordinating with 211 so that Veterans Bridge Home and NC Serves becomes one of their standard referral options as they go through their third tree of questions. So that's very exciting. We've also being integrated into the coordinated entry process within Mecklenburg County and have started doing dual entry with the HMIS system.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. And just a quick update on Western. We are approaching our 1 year. We are the youngest of all the NC Serves networks. We are having our 1 year anniversary in competition with Jim Prosser and the anniversary date, September 18th. But it'll be good. We're scattered across the state, so it'll be good for our local folks there. I'm going to go ahead and not really speak to my slide. I'm going to give you a quick glimpse of what our 1 year, this past year from July to June, looks like across the state. And for those of you who don't know what NC Serves are or is, Kyle, you mentioned a while ago you have a Rolodex, you've got resources. When any of you in this room are assistant veterans, you do that very, very well. What Serves allows you to do is when you hit that roadblock and you don't know where to turn, you don't know what to do, you're out of your Rolodex. Everybody keeps telling you no, and you spent 3 hours trying to help that individual. Save that time. Send it to Serves. Our teams are designed and are made to go be that enhanced Google for you in that community. So we're going to talk a little bit about how many providers we've got, what that looks like, and it's a free service to you. So Patrick, if you want to talk a little bit about just how it works, the no wrong door entry, and then it's going to be brief, I promise you.
So really what our goal is to distribute the knowledge, distribute the wealth, and hook the veterans up with the resources as quickly as possible. You as providers can enter veterans into the system when you do encounter that roadblock, when you do encounter that veteran that might be a little harder to serve or has a need that falls outside of your agency's scope. Just go ahead, put them in the network. One of the care coordination centers will pick that up. We'll call, we'll have a quick conversation with that veteran, find out what's important to them, what's important for them, and then match them up with existing resources in the community. The other thing is veterans can refer in. We've got all the care coordination centers have their own individual 855, 800, 876 toll-free numbers. We also have assistance forms online, so veterans can reach out to the network. We'll get that information from them in that same process and then pass it out to your agencies so that you can connect with and assist that veteran. It's really, truly a no wrong door port of entry. They can come in at any point, either directly through the network, from a provider, or even at the VA. I know Brandon's got a kiosk set up at the VA up there in the Asheville area with an iPad where veterans can, when they're checking out their VA appointment, can enter themselves. And we're always looking for that creative entry point. As I said before, Mecklenburg County, we're now part of the coordinated entry process, where if a veteran identifies as being homeless, he's automatically referred through HMIS to our network. So we have a lot of different ways to connect with the network, and we're real excited, and we just love serving vets.
And part of what that, I'll just talk a little bit about that too. What makes it great is if you send us a referral for a veteran, let's say for legal, because you can't find a legal provider, and I send that to Jim Prosser because Jim Prosser is an attorney that does pro bono work. We send that referral to him. If he gets that referral and says, I can't do it, I'm going on vacation, I'm not going to do it, he rejects that referral back to our teams. Guess who the rejection is to, though? It's to our teams. You can tell us no, it's no big deal. We scratch our heads and look for that other resource until we find it. That way the veteran or the family member is never told no. They get told yes every time that referral matches. So all of us that know we don't like to tell nobody no, as a veteran who come home from Iraq looking for resources, I hated to be told no. It causes it's a force multiplier and a spiral downhill. So the network has allowed us to do those things. 280 national, regional, local providers across the state are a part of the NC Serves network. We're also partners with 12 other networks across the United States, and we're all able to migrate and talk to one another. So that veteran that's leaving Camp Lejeune, that's going to Pittsburgh, we can send a referral straight to PA Serves, and they've got a landing pad once they get there for whatever human service need that is. We are addressing 20 human service needs across the spectrum. If you look at the slide real fast, I just want to point out your local nonprofits down there on the bottom, 114. That is where a lot of the work is being done. We talk about national programs, state programs, but oftentimes it's those nickel and dimes. It's that social enrichment, that looking for that new tribe. Maybe it's the VFW, maybe it's the DAV, maybe it's the Marine Corps League, maybe it's First Baptist Presbyterian Church of the Jews. Who knows? But we try to match that up to each other to get that need met. So your local nonprofits are a really big deal in this capacity. We're going to skip this side. We're going to keep moving. So we have 64 counties that are part of the networks now, but that doesn't mean we're not helping other counties, that veterans in other counties. They still can enter the system. We're still going to match them to a referral. Even if it's outside of our scope, we're still going to go to work for them. It's just they're not a part of the network that's capturing some of this data that Jim likes to see or Jeff Doyle likes to see that can really impact that change. I'm going to skip that slide. I wish Cody was still here because I'm really going to make a big point to brag about DHHS. The Department of Health and Human Services has made the first really significant lift and investment into this network. DHHS has done that, and they did that 2 months ago. And so I think that deserves a round of applause. I know Cody's not here, but let's give DHHS a round of applause real fast. Yeah. So when you look at what that investment entailed was allowing us and the Unite Us platform to really make some changes to address mental health services. So in the first 2 months, we saw 91 requests for mental health services in the first 2 months we did that. So what we did was we expanded that. Before this, we were looking at health as health. We all know health could be physical health, dental health, mental health, substance use, peer support. So we've broken that down into those categories now that we can track that a little bit better. Why? Well, that's important to Jim. That's important to DHHS. More importantly, it's important to our veterans community because now we can really track the real needs. One of the real needs in Western, because I didn't talk about Western, was peer support. And I've been screaming peer support for days because really, Kyle, I mean, you can talk all day. I can share and open up stuff to you, and you can share and open stuff to me. My Marine buddy right here. Why you went National Guard, I don't know, but I love you with all my heart. But we can talk. We can talk like this and have a conversation. We just met today that I may not have a conversation with my wife about, and the journeys that we've got. So that peer support, finding somebody to walk hand in hand, is important. So we've just recently hired a peer support as a part of our coordination team at NC Serves Western to really help that need out. And some of the stuff that you see on there, we're looking at the data, is really important, but it's what drives decisions that DHHS can make, the VA can make, the DAV can make, and opening new programs at a local level. And that's what we're really looking at.
Problem. Because he knew my story. And so I picked up the phone and I called him, and the conversation started off, who are you? What are you calling me for? This and that. That leaned into, hey, look, can I get your information in case I need to talk to you again? 35 minutes later, because we can sit down and talk to each other. And there's many days that I've sat and talked to another veteran, but there's been a doctor on the other side who's never stepped foot in another country that I can't talk to. And my wife will tell you, she knows my story as well as I do because I've told it so many times. But some people I don't feel comfortable talking to. This guy, even though he was on the other end of the phone, felt comfortable enough to talk to me. So some of those referrals may not go through the system, but may just be a text to say, hey, can you reach out to this veteran? He's in a tough spot. So, it's not always physical, but it's a lot of mental and emotional as well.
Thank you, Kyle. So this next talks about our number one need that we're seeing across all spectrums is housing with employment. I want to make a note real fast because I just talked to Marla Brown with 211 and Laura and team. And what's unique about this is in the civilian sector, 211 looks at the same kind of data. They use a little bit of a different taxonomy, but they look at it the same. Employment's not even in the top 5 needs of people who call 211. Employment has been number 2 in NC Serves across the board. What's that really telling us about veterans? We're ready to go to work. So that's something unique that I wanted just to throw up there. You can see that we've got close to 8,000 complex needs that we're working on, that we work with the community. You want to tell this quick story real fast?
So we had a veteran spouse I just want to talk about super quick. She actually entered through Wake County Veteran Services office. They referred her into the network because her husband was incarcerated, the veteran, he was incarcerated. She was getting about $137 a month in benefits. Her son was diagnosed with PTSD and was living with her. And then she was diagnosed with leukemia and could not afford the treatments to get assistance. So, and also her well got repoed, which I've never heard of, but that happened to her apparently, and her car as well. So they were trying to make all of this work off of $137 a month. So she came in, 9 different organizations came together to help her. We had some were out of network, some were in network already. And so the benefit of having those out of network referrals is that we get to talk to those organizations and say, like, look, you helped this person, you should be part of the network so that we can track that and you can be part of this bigger picture. But so in a month, we actually were able to get her $2,000 a month in benefits, and she got back paid for what she was owed from before. I think it was UNC. It was either UNC or Duke. Gave her free medical treatment for her leukemia and her prescriptions. And her son got into counseling. She got all of her utilities turned back on. And there was something else too. And she was signed up for like SNAP and things like that to help her out. So definitely and she got a new car. So definitely a huge transformation in her life. And it only took us a month because we brought together 9 different organizations that she didn't have to knock on those doors and ask for help and possibly get turned away herself. So.
Yeah, thank you. And that just goes to show, yes. That was like 7 or 8 human service needs across 9 different providers that was done in a manner that was appropriate for this spouse in basically almost less than a month. That's sort of a difficult thing to really fathom. How many of us can do that on our own? We can't. It takes a coordination center and relationships with each one of you to be able to provide those types of services. I want to also echo a little bit what Jim Prosser said, because you see the panel that comes up here, and there are secretary levels, assistant secretary levels, vision level up here. But when you have a panel like this, and Jim makes a phone call to find a veteran a job, and he's the assistant secretary, I want you to know your panel up here and the leaderships you have in the state is something to be proud of. And if they're being transparent, we should be transparent back to them. So I just wanted to thank Jim and the team up here for that. And we're going to leave one more thing with Brianna. She's going to talk a little bit about what Kyle was talking about the family and the spouses.
Okay, so right now in North Carolina, about 8% of veterans are female, so it's important to note that you said a lot of the homelessness and things like that come along with the single-family veteran female. So 26% of the users across the NC Serves network are female, so it's great to see that the network is supporting that population. Also, 9% of spouses, families, and caregivers are also in the network that have been connected to services as well.
Awesome, thank you. So for those of you who are not already associated or working with a Serves Coordination Center, please, you can look us up on the Google. You can find us in the resource guide. Please reach out to us, become a provider, become a partner with us. We have small focus groups and in-progress reviews all the time that really get into the weeds of why things aren't working. We can talk about what's working, what we're doing great, but I think each individual market gets together and finds out where are we missing the mark, where are we falling short, because it's going to differ in Asheville than Charlotte than everywhere else. 16. 9 states.
So it's not just the learning that takes place here in North Carolina, it's the learning that takes place across the rest of the country. And if I can make this as simple as possible for jarheads, if you participate in NC Serves, they give me pretty pictures that my boss gives me money for, that I give you program money for, and that's how that works. Additionally, I would like to thank everyone for being here today.
Right. And